We've just done a bit of the adjustments on the microphone. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah. Hopefully it won't be so clicky tonight. So we're over the hump of halfway. Start relaxing, taking it easy now. And what a beautiful day it was today. It was just gorgeous. Conditions do help. They do help to make us feel good and lift our minds. So even though they are objects of consciousness, when they're good, let's appreciate them. So yeah, good companions, comfortable place to be, good food, opportunity to practice the Dhamma, and great weather as well. So it doesn't get much better than this, on an external level. But then there's always the internal world, which it's different. It's a different world. When I came into the monastery, I've been going through a lot of difficulties, and people say, "Well, why did you become a monk?" And basically, it was suffering. I came here 23 years ago in April the 1st it was, funnily enough. Look what happened to me. So, April Fool's Day. Still haven't quite got the joke yet. I suppose walking around in a skirt something to do with it. But anyway, I got introduced to Buddhism about a month before, and a friend of the gentleman I met, everything he said made real sense to me. I'd been meditating for a few years already at that time. I'd been running a small fitness company, and I was really stressed out. Really, it was very high pressure. Well, at least my mind was making it high pressure anyway. So, and I had been meditating. I had been very helpful, and I was looking for something more. And I was introduced to this Buddhist gentleman, and for the first time I met a Buddhist, and we talked for about 2 hours, and it was just wonderful listening to him. It just made so much sense. It was so sensible and logical, and but the thing that struck me the most was when we parted, I offered to pay him for his time, because it was set up by someone else, and he was actually a counsellor. He worked as a counsellor as well. So I expected it to pay for the session, and he said, "No, you can't pay for this. This is priceless." And I was really shocked, because I paid for absolutely everything, in my life, everything. Everyone wanted money, for the smallest service, and so this was the thing that stuck in my mind. And then he recommended I come on a retreat here, and it was a 10-day retreat, and I'd never been silent for more than a few hours before, so they weren't so careful back then, shall we say. So I got thrown onto this 10-day retreat with Ajahn Anando, and I remember I was sitting right down there, near where Jenna is now, and and the place was full of restless people, and or maybe it was just my mind, I don't know. And Ajahn Anando came in this door, and it was like he floated. I couldn't really see his feet, so it looked like he floated up to the tamat, yeah. And I had to look down, make sure he wasn't on wheels or something. And he sat down, and he just had this sort of incredible aura around him of sort of serenity and joy. And I thought, I want some of that, you know. And then after that, it was 10 days of hell. Absolute hell. That was the best part. It was just the emotionals, the lid came off, and there was just these incredible emotions. I couldn't hear a word he was saying. It was just, you know, the words were audible, but my mind was just so agitated that nothing went past the outer boundary, if you like. And I experienced incredible states of terror and anger and frustration and guilt and everything just came up at once, over and over again. I can't remember who I was telling, I think it was Carl. I got so angry once, it was pouring with rain outside, and we were all two of us were doing walking meditation in the men's dormitory, and we were crossing over in the middle and then going back. But here I sit now, which is very strange, because even though it was incredible suffering, I realised that, you know, just looking at Ajahn Anando at that time, so that feeling, I want some of that. I want to be like that. I want to feel like that. The joy that he was sort of emitting, you know, it was just so serene. It was so attractive. So I left here on the Sunday night, and I decided to make a decision right then. I was engaged to get married at the time to a very beautiful, wonderful young lady, and you know, we had all the trappings of wealth. We were doing very well financially, and we were on these beautiful holidays around the world, 5-star holidays, and but something inside me just said, you just can't leave this stuff unattended. You know, it's just all this incredible confusion and frustration and anger and anxiety. You know, I just can't go back and pretend it wasn't there, it didn't happen, because it was still there, you know, to a degree. So I decided to come back to the monastery. So I closed down my business. I had a property as well, and I didn't sell that immediately, but I broke off my relationship, and then I came back on the Friday. So I left on the Sunday and I returned on the Friday, and I haven't left since. That was 1994. So, and I missed her terribly, you know. It was really, because we were very close, best friends as well, you know. But I couldn't leave her in a state of uncertainty, so I just, after about a year or so, I told her that I'm just not coming back, because I didn't know what I was going to do. I had to free her from that connection out of compassion. And obviously I didn't go back, so it was a good thing to do, wasn't it? You think? Anyway, so, and it was a terrible struggle as a monk, you know, coming into the monastery, and as an anagarika, you know, I couldn't make that step to start with. 6 months I stayed as a lay person in the monastery, and back in those days, the anagarikas used to be sort of, you know, that they used to say, work like an anagarika. Phrases like this were commonplace, you know. I've been working like an anagarika all day, you know. So it's, it wasn't quite slavery, but it was close. So like 16-hour days were the norm. It was really hard work. So I thought, well, I don't really fancy that. But one day Ajahn Anando came up to me again and he said, okay, you've got to become an anagarika or you've got to leave. That's your choice. So I was forced into it, So I took the leap and became an anagarika, and then after a year, I was still uncertain. I didn't know what to do because my mind was all over the place. I was very confused. But I had faith. For some reason, I had faith in the Four Noble Truths. When I came here on that retreat, I did meet the Four Noble Truths for the first time. And there's something inside me just said, that is truth. It is truth. I know that from experience. I could see that in myself. I couldn't understand what to do with it, but from previous experience in life, it resonated deeply. And I would have these incredible dreams, amazing dreams. Waking life was miserable, but the dreams were nice. So I slept a lot. And then, what happened next? So so I wanted to continue. I wanted to take the next level of ordination, but they said I couldn't because I wasn't ready. So that's sort of that's a euphemism for your basket case, basically. So I waited another year, and I sort of sorted myself out a bit and got in line and started doing everything right, and they let me go further. So I ordained as a bhikkhu in 1997, so 3 years between first becoming an anagarika. And I was still really struggling, and then one day the abbot then was Ajahn Dhamma, and he invited me to Thailand. He said, we'll just have a few months in Thailand, have a rest at Wat Nanachat, and then come back here. It was the winter time, so we left at the end of December. And we went to Bangkok, had a couple of days there, and then we went off to Dao Dam. Now, Dao Dam is an incredibly remote monastery on the Burmese border. It takes 3 hours to get there in a 4-wheel drive on mud tracks. So the nearest, I won't say 3 hours, the nearest metal road is 3 hours from Dao Dam. So once you get to the metal road, there's still a long way to go to sort of a town. So we got in there, and we were staying up on this mountain, and there's this, it's beautiful forest, untouched, beautiful, 300,000 acres of forest that the monastery protects there as best it can. So, and there were 3 levels. There's the inside sala, which is on the top on the plateau, and it's just bamboo platforms, just a bit higher than this, and you sleep and live on those with a mosquito net for protection. And then there's a few kutis on the other ridge, which is about the same height. And then there's paths down to the bottom where there's a central sala at the bottom of the mountain. And it's about 45 minutes walk up and down to this bottom sala. And then you get fed there, because there's no village. So there's no bindabat, or no alms round, because there's no village. So they hired Burmese workers to cook. And then they'll bring the food in by Land Rover and then leave it there. So the first night we stayed at the bottom, and then I was asked if I wanted to go up and stay in the inside plateau on one of these dians. So I agreed. There's something inside of me just wanted to face my fears, because Dao Dam, this monastery is, like I say, it's in the centre of a huge forest, and the full chain of animal life still exists there. So there's elephants, tigers, all manner of snakes, leopards, monkeys in the trees, scorpions, tarantulas, everything you can imagine that you wouldn't want to meet is there. Bears. Right, there was the last of the Asian rhino were left in this area. So they asked me if I wanted to go up and stay in the forest in this little plateau on my own. And I said yes. So someone took me up and showed me where everything was. And on top of the plateau, it's absolutely beautiful forest. And there's this stream about 6 or 7 feet wide that meanders through the plateau. This beautiful babbling stream. And then as it goes down the mountain, you have these cascading waterfalls all the way to the bottom, and then these bamboo bridges that go back and forth across the stream on the way down, so you can walk down. So I selected one of these dings on top this bamboo bed, and with mosquito net for protection from the tigers and the elephants. And so you would bathe in the stream, and the stream was perfectly pure, so you took your drinking water from there and everything. And, idyllic isn't the word. It was just so beautiful. So... And during the day, it really is a paradise. But, as the light started to fade, and I've got my little candle lantern. It's like this metal lantern with cloth around the outside, and you put a candle inside, and you get this light, and you walk around with this lantern. So I hung up my lantern next to my mosquito net, and I sat in meditation. And now the forest, or the jungle, it's not it's jungle there, is, during the daytime it's fairly placid and quiet, but at night it's like a psychedelic discotheque gone mad. You've got frogs and cicadas and the babbling stream, and it's just this cacophony of sound. It's really loud. And then every so often you'd hear a roar of a tiger in the distance. So, remember I was talking about a good laxative the other night. Now this was fantastic. It was really... So I just sat there shivering, I was just, because I wanted to test myself. I just wanted to see if I could bear with this level of anxiety. And it was absolutely terrifying. I can't say it wasn't. And it just kept getting darker and darker and darker. And I thought, I'll just let the candle go out and I'll sit. And I just couldn't see anything. It was black. Absolutely black. And there was just this constant noise. Just assault of this noise. And like you sweep your paths, there's these sort of sandy paths, and you have to sweep the leaves off them. So when you walk, because the sand is white, so when you walk you can see if anything's on the path. So, because of the snakes, so the snakes will go across the path under your feet. So if you've got something to see them, a background to see them against, like the cobras and the banded crates, they are like the cobra's massive great snake. The king cobra is about 5 meters long, and they're like this thick. And now on a time there later, I was staying in one of the huts. We go forward a bit, and they tend to build them up on stilts, and then underneath this one had a little toilet. And about 4 o'clock in the morning I woke up and I wanted to go to relieve myself. So I put my sabong on, and sometimes we roll our sabong. We had like a roll down the front. We roll the cloth and strap it on, so it's got this long piece of thick roll at the front. And I walked out the kuti, and I was like half asleep. I didn't know really what was happening. And I walked down the path, and I felt this tapping against the front of my cloth. and I looked down, and there was a green tree viper striking me between the legs into this cloth, sinking its teeth into the cloth. So I stepped back. That was the closest I came to death, I think, at Dhamma. So, anyways, it didn't get me. It was 3 strikes with his teeth into the cloth, Probably it's venom there as well. And a monk the year before had got bitten by a green tree viper at that kuti. And by the way, if you ever get bitten by a snake, make sure you get bitten on your hands or your feet. Just a bit of advice. So if a snake's going to bite you, obviously avoid it if you can. But if you see it, it's going to get you, just put your hand out or your foot. Because normally the venom goes into the lymph system, not the blood. And so your lymph moves more slowly. And so, for instance, this monk got bitten on the foot, and he had to sit in a chair for a week with his feet down. He couldn't lie down, to sit in a chair for a week, and his leg just exploded. It just went like this, because the lymph swells. So if you get bitten in the torso, your organs burst, basically. So anyway, that's just an aside. So back to the little jungle platform at Dowdum. I'm sitting there shaking, and then in the distance I see these little lights appearing. There's hundreds of these little lights. It's completely black everywhere, and then these hundreds of little lights start appearing. They start coming closer and closer and closer, and they start swirling around the mosquito net. Oh, these hundreds of lights swirling around. I thought it was the Davids had come to see. But it wasn't. So I had a visitation from fireflies. It was beautiful. It's mesmerizing it was. Anyway, this is all a sidetrack from the main story. But so we stayed there for a while, and then we went on to Wat Pah Nanachat, which is the International Forest Monastery, which is the main monastery for Westerners in Thailand. And it's very simple, like most of the monasteries there. So you sleep on a wooden floor. You get this nice sprung mat about this thick, like about 2-3 millimeters thick to sleep on a wooden floor. And so most of them use these lovely wooden pillows, these V-shaped wooden pillows, which are incredibly comfortable. So, and the place was absolutely teeming with snakes. I was seeing cobras and bandicrates all over the place, these huge pythons. And they didn't have any tigers or anything, but it was lots of snakes. So I was there for a while. It's Bindabat in the morning, so it's very beautiful. There's this big wall around the monastery. It's only about 130 acres, and inside is this lush forest. And the wall's about 6 to 8 feet high all the way around, so nothing can get out, so the snakes stay in. Occasionally you find a hole somewhere where, like, the pythons would sometimes go out and steal the chickens from the farmers, and then come back in. But anyway, been there for a while, and I got used to the place, and it's 6 months or so. But I was still suffering a lot. I was really depressed and just had so much confusion, and I didn't know where I was going or what I was doing. And then one day, a friend of mine, he about 5 o'clock, I'd really got into Tai Chi then, and I was doing my Tai Chi about 5 in the evening, on the veranda of my hut number 25. If you ever go, brick, lovely brick hut, nice and cool in the summer. And he comes up and said, "What does he want now? God, disturbing me." And he said, "Come, quick, there's a problem. Come." And he was my next door neighbour is about 200 metres away. So we ran down to his, I was following, ran down to his kuti. We rushed out to the back of his kuti, and then there was this square pit, about 2 metres by 2 metres at the back. So, and it was a well. So in Thailand, they don't make wells with these lovely stone surrounds and the sort of windy bit at the top. It's just a square pit that just goes directly down, dug by hand. So, and I looked over the edge, and about 3 metres down in the dirty water, framed in the dirty water, was the head of this dog looking up. And it was panting and whining. It was exhausted. He said when he came back after his chores about 11 o'clock in the morning, he kept hearing this whimpering and whining. And then eventually, about 4:30, he said, "What the hell's that?" He went out the back, and then he looked down the dog. The dog was in the pit, and it was swimming. So it'd been swimming for at least 5 hours, maybe longer. You could see the desperation in the poor creature's eyes. So the pit was all crumbly at the top. All the earth was crumbling away. So we didn't really know what to do, but he had some of this plastic washing line, blue plastic washing line. So we took a bathing cloth and we tied it to the washing line, like in a loop. So it's like a piece of oblong cloth that's tied in a loop like this. So the thing was, we would throw it down, and it would know what to do and just put itself in the loop. Of course. So the plan came to be. So he stood on the side, threw it down, and of course it closed. The hole closed as you throw it down. It doesn't open; it closes. But the dog was fortunately more intelligent than we were, and it clamped its paws to either side of the cloth, like his front legs knew what to do. It helped put them there, And so we thought, okay, well, this just might work. So we pulled up, slowly pulling it up. But each time we pulled up, he would slip down a little more on the cloth, because the cloth was wet, of course. And just as we were about 1 metre from the top, he slipped off and somersaulted dramatically into the water again and disappeared under the surface. And we were sort of waiting on the edge, 5 seconds, 6 seconds, and suddenly the head popped up again. So, and now we started to panic because we could see the desperation in the dog. It was, it was exhausted and getting very desperate. So we tried again, and we pulled it up, and it kept just slipping, gone again. And this happened one more time, and then we decided this just isn't going to work. Let's try something else. So we got a piece of bamboo, and you get this huge bamboo there, like this thick, and it's really strong. So we put that across the top, and the idea was to lower me down to get the dog out. But this washing line was so weak, it wasn't strong enough to hold me. So we had one attempt at that, but couldn't see what was below the water, how deep it was or what might be there. So we just didn't know what to do. So we tried again with the first method until we could think of something else. So we threw it down again. The dog clamped its paws against the cloth. We pulled it up and started to slip off again. As we got it to the top, and about 1/2 metre away it slipped off. But I saw, and I fell to my knees and put my arm down like this and caught it under the shoulder, pulled it against the side wall. But I could feel myself starting to go in with it because I was off balance and the side was crumbling. And somehow, I don't know quite what happened, but I gained my balance and pulled up, and it pulled it up onto my lap. So I leant back, and the dog was on my lap, and its body totally froze. All its muscles froze immediately. It just couldn't move. It was like rigid. Both, front and back legs rigid. Everything was rigid apart from its tail, which was wagging furiously. And its tongue which was licking my hand. They probably hadn't been working much, those two. So it wasn't that big, but it was covered in mange. Poor thing, you know. So we picked it up and carried it. And like I say, the kutis are mostly on stilts because they have a lot of flooding. And there was a veranda up top, so we carried it up the stairs and laid it on a towel. And we massaged this dog. Massaged all its muscles for about an hour and a half, 2 hours. We just sat there massaging it until it started to come back and get some sense of being alright again. And then the bell went for evening puja. So wandered off round to the sala, central sala, and we were late, but that was okay. And so I sat down to meditate, and at Wat Pah Nanchah nothing happens ever. It's just so boring. Same, that every day is the same. Bindabat in the morning, you only have one meal a day there, 8 o'clock in the morning, and then you do a chore for an hour, cup of tea at 5 o'clock, and that's it. You don't meet anybody else, you're on your own most of the time. It was like that then. So this was a big event in my mind, you know. I'd been there about 6 months, so something had actually happened. And so it came up in consciousness when I was sitting in meditation, everything that happened with this dog. And my mind just went through, I just couldn't stop it. And after a while I had this joy starting to emerge. And I just couldn't stop thinking about what happened. And this joy just kept coming up and up. And it was like so blissful. And I just was this ball of bliss with these thoughts about having saved this dog's life. And I just couldn't sleep that night. I was just so blissed out. It just went on and on. The mind was so still and beautiful and clear, and this incredible bliss. You know, it was like being in heaven. Well, I don't know about that, but maybe that could be some way of describing it, just this bliss. And then every day at once a week you would have what they call the big sweep. So I remember I mentioned about the paths and the snakes and these white sandy paths. So you sweep the paths, everybody goes out and sweeps the paths, sweeps the leaves off the paths. And I was sweeping down to my friend's kuti the next day, and at the mealtime, or at Bindabat, he told me when he got back from evening puja, the dog had gone. So I was sweeping back down to his path, and then he came out of the path and he said, "The dog's come back." So I walked round the corner, and this mangy dog was there, but he brought 2 friends with it. And he came running up to me and jumped up onto me, you know, and I caught it. It was like, it was just thanking me, you know, for saving its life. And I just felt so much happiness, you know, it was just incredible bliss. The trouble was, the next day there was 5 dogs came round. Do you remember the little hole where the python would go through? The dogs could also go through that hole. And then the next day there were 7. And then they had this, fortunately it wasn't my hut, it was my friend's hut, and his was on stilts, so they'd all be under his kuti. And he said there's like this, they're fighting and barking all day, and and then they would go home at night, you know. So he was getting so frustrated, so one night he followed them out and he found the hole and he blocked it up with stones. Yeah. So if you remember, I said that Wat Pah Nanchah is surrounded by a wall, and on the outside of that wall is a track, like a dirt road. It just follows the wall on the outside of the wall. And I used to regularly walk round that just to get some exercise, about 45 minutes. And on the very last section is like about a group of 10 houses where all the dogs come from. And normally you'd go past there and all of them be really viciously, baring their teeth at you as you go past. Apart from the last house where that little dog lived. And every time I'd go past, it would come out with his tail wagging and come up to greet me and lick my hand. And I'd go away. I got sent off to another monastery for a year. And then I came back and I did the walk. And it would come out again. And it would come up and recognise me. And I felt so much joy, to having saved this dog's life, and the way that it seemed to. Well, I hope it remembered. Maybe it's just friendly and did that to everyone. And then I went to Australia. I lived there for a while. I went back to Wat Pah Chat and I did my walk. And one day it didn't come out anymore. But like I say, at that time I was really depressed. So this was a great teaching, how quickly the mind can change when a positive perception gets put in. I was full of self-hatred, anxiety, depression, and I really hadn't got a hold of the teachings in terms of what we've been sharing here. I was just so immersed in my suffering. I was not aware of it. I was it. It was a different sort of awareness. So I was really suffering, but suddenly something positive like this, let's say an act of generosity, an act of, helping another creature like this, it changed everything. And suddenly I had this incredible joy, and that made me reflect on what I can do to help my mind, even if I am lost in this stuff, if I can't get perspective. So I started practicing metta. I started practicing ways of manipulating my own perceptions. So I didn't believe what I was thinking and feeling. I didn't get totally immersed in my thoughts and emotions. I started practicing, okay, I'm feeling like this, but what can I do with my own mind to adjust the way I'm feeling? Not in terms of pushing it away, but just using thinking. So I started to develop this metta practice of not believing my thoughts and putting, it's what the Buddha calls substitution. So he gave the analogy of there's a piece of wood with a wooden peg in it, and you take another wooden peg, I think I said this today, and you use a mallet and tap it out with the first. And he said this is substitution, using thought to replace thought. So this is what I started using, and I really got an incredible amount of relief. I started getting some more positive emotions because it was so dark up to then. And I started to see the perceptions I carried around about myself. Like I had this constant perception that I wasn't good enough. It doesn't matter where it came from. You don't need to think about, okay, how did this happen? You don't need to think about that, but it was there. I could see this perception that I'm not good enough. So I always felt as though I had to impress people, or work really hard to get up to the mark, or self-improve all the time. I was never good enough as I was. And this is really important to understand in your meditation. If you carry a perception like this into your meditation practice when you start, and you don't see it clearly, you don't actually take note of this perception, then that's where you come from. That's where you start from. You start from a place of, I'm not good enough and I have to improve so I become a better person in the future. Now, how much time have we spent here talking about timelessness? A lot of time on timelessness, yeah? So, if that perception's held, you're never going to meet the mark of being good enough. Because the perception of not being good enough is a habit pattern that gets reinforced by you following it. So if you follow its instructions, you're reinforcing that sense of not being good enough. So it never ends. You're stuck with it. So I did this for a long time. You know, I was trying to get, you know, there's always this sense of trying to get a better situation than I had. Trying to improve my situation because this one wasn't good enough. And I was disgruntled with it, but I never looked at it clearly to see what the cause was. Why wasn't it good enough? I just took it for granted that now's not good enough. I need to improve and make everything better for the future. So all my meditation was informed by that. So I would pump on the breath relentlessly, trying to get the jhanas from this position to, you know, give myself a boost, to make myself wise, you know, because I thought I wasn't wise, I wasn't good enough. So there was a question about intention some time back that Ajahn Anando answered very skillfully around the moral section of the Eightfold Path. It's very important to get that foundation in place, that we understand intention in terms of our action and speech. But tonight I'd like to talk about it around your meditation. You know, it's really important to get this right perspective from the start. So I did talk about the Four Noble Truths last time I gave a talk here, and the section around the Eightfold Path, I just skimmed it really. So it will go into a bit more depth now, but we're going to withdraw or remove the section on morality. So you're just left with 5 factors. You're left with Sammaditthi, which is right view, Sammasankappo, which is right intention, right thought or right attitude. It's up to you what you use. Then you have Samma Vayama, which is right effort, Sammasati, which is right mindfulness, and Sammasamadhi, which is, we tend to use the word right concentration, but I don't feel as that is really helpful to use that word for Westerners, so I'm going to use right calm here. So it's the right level of peace. Right peace. Perfect peace. That's better. Perfect peace. So our level of wisdom and understanding informs our intention. And our intention informs our effort. Our effort informs the way we apply mindfulness, and right mindfulness leads to right peace or perfect peace. There's a flow. So one goes into the next. If we have Micchaditthi, wrong view, we automatically have Miccha Sankappo, wrong intention. Wrong effort, wrong mindfulness, no peace. So this is really important to understand. And from complete Micchaditthi to complete Sammaditthi, obviously there's many different grades of that. So to the level that foolishness is present, that's how much suffering we'll experience. So our intention's affected, our effort is affected, where we're going in life is affected, everything is affected by our understanding, our view of the world, and our view of ourselves. So right view is the first 3 Noble Truths. That's where you get your right view from. And then the 4th Noble Truth is the practice, what you do with that. So the level of right understanding there is informs our effort in meditation. So we're sitting with, I'm not good enough as I am, for instance. So I'm sitting here and I've got that in my mind. I'm not good enough as I am. So I can't see timelessness because I'm not good enough as I am. Therefore, I have to improve. So that puts me in a space of time. I'm stuck with that. So if you have a perception that you are not good enough and you're carrying that around in your minds, you have to identify that and approach it, not act upon it. So Lompo Sameda would say, if you have ignorance to start with, you have suffering as a result. So we have spoken about not self. So the self-perception that we have is a perception about something that doesn't exist anyway, ultimately. And perceptions can be manipulated, if you like, because they're impermanent. You can manipulate the perceptions that you have if you do that, if you have the skill. So what I would do with this, because I saw this after a while, even though I'd had the insights around timelessness, there would still be that drive to improve because of this self-perception that was hanging around in consciousness. So to help me settle in the present more, instead of trying to improve myself, it changed to shift the perception. Because any amount of effort is going against the Four Noble Truths. If it's effort with desire, like I want to improve, I have an ambition, I have a desire, I have a becoming to improve, sense of becoming, that's one of the three desires as the cause of suffering in the first or the second Noble Truth. I'm cultivating that desire to become better. Therefore, I'm creating a lot of suffering for myself. And I also am averse to myself because I'm not good enough. You see, you're getting these two things happening. Self-aversion and wanting to improve. But I assure you there is nothing wrong with any one of you here. You are all good enough as you are. Your consciousness is perfectly pure. It cannot be stained or damaged in any way whatsoever. It is the refuge. The ego is not a refuge, and that's the bit that's creating all this. I'm not good enough, I'm foolish, I'm flawed, or whatever it might be. We do have problems with this in critical Western societies, that we tend to criticize ourselves a lot. I know I might be just speaking from a personal point of view, but some conversations I've had with people, this has been highlighted. So if that which is perfectly pure and stainless, which cannot be damaged, whatever you've done in your life, however bad you've been, that cannot affect your consciousness. Your consciousness is inherently pure. It's just this stuff that is the problem. And these perceptions that we've been conditioned with can be manipulated, like I say. And this is where as I said earlier, I was using thought to help manipulate my feelings. I wasn't trying to push them away. I was just trying to use thought to generate more positivity. So the feedback loops of negativity, like including thought and emotion, were being broken. It's a very good skill to have to break these negative feedback loops. And the best way to do that is with thought that is penetrative and pertinent to the particular mind state that's apparent. So with this perception that I carried of myself, I would just simply say, I'm good enough as I am. Brits can definitely not say, I'm wonderful and perfect. We can't do that. Maybe the Americans can, but Brits, we can't go that far. We want, okay, just about manage, I'm good enough as I can. But just to tell you how this works, it's like when you have incredible negativity, you can't believe positive thinking in your mind because it's such a strong habit to have negative thought there. Such a strong habit. So when you even speak it into your consciousness, it's like someone else's voice. You know, it's like a distant voice that, you know, I'm good enough as I am. Who was that? But with repetition, you just keep going with it, you know. And every time it says, no, you're not, you're completely useless, you're a hopeless case, you know, you're never going to make the grade. You just keep going with it, and you can have this wrestling match going on inside between the intentional thought that you're putting in there to arrest or undermine the negative states that have been created over a long time, and then the negative state, you know, it's coming, it doesn't want to lose its ground. It's a habit. Habits are difficult to shift. So you have to be patient, and you just keep pushing with the new perception you want to put in there about yourself. And what I found happens is, you know, to start with, it's like someone else's voice. And then it comes closer and closer and closer, and suddenly it just clicks in. And I'm speaking it. My voice is suddenly saying it, and my throat and my tongue is saying it into my head. And it's like a sense of disbelief. Are you really saying this, you know? And even though the negativity is there, it's been undermined to a degree. You just keep going. And gradually, it takes over the mind. This new perception that you're establishing there. You know, it does take a lot of effort, this. But if those negative perceptions remain, you're always going to be seeking something better in the future, using craving, which is the cause of suffering. You won't be able to let go of that until you undermine the distorted perceptions of self. You know, you don't have to hang on to it once it's done. It's like you release an energy pattern that's been held there, and it gives you a chance to let go into the refuge more. So I kept on with this, and it softens and softens and softens. You know, sometimes, actually, I quite like myself now. I'm alright sometimes, you know. Not perfect. And that means I can stay with myself, like in the present. There's not this aversion to being with myself as well. I don't feel averse to being in the same body as myself. And by that you can relax and you can start feeling contented with what's here right now. Because there isn't anything wrong at all. It's like there's a hose pipe. A perfect hose pipe. And you turn the tap on and the water runs through very cleanly without catching at all. And then you go back to the hose pipe in a few years and it's got these kinks in it. And you turn the water on, the pressure builds up and it's all sort of distorted. And you get this little trickle out the end. That's what a distorted perception does. All you have to do is undo the kink in the hose pipe. And then the water flows cleanly again. But if there's these distorted perceptions, there's always going to be a build-up of pressure and suffering. So, there's this lovely teaching, it says, from the Sutta Nipata, the Parayana Sutta, the Buddha says, the purity of perfectly balanced mindfulness, built on the basis of knowing the way things are, this is liberation knowledge. This is the destruction of ignorance. So the first bit is the purity of perfectly balanced mindfulness. That's what we're looking for. That's what we're trying to encourage, mindfulness that's perfectly balanced. Now, if we're coming from a place of ignorance, it's never going to be perfectly balanced. So it says, built on the basis of knowing the way things are, built on the truth built on the understanding of the Four Noble Truths. Understanding the Four Noble Truths, you go into the Eightfold Path. You have right view is the first three Noble Truths, which gives you right intention, right effort, right mindfulness. The purity of perfectly balanced mindfulness comes from right view, right intention, right effort. So, if your perception is distorted, your intention is never going to be correct. Because your understanding can never be correct. Your effort's never going to be correct. Because your understanding and your intention are never correct. Once you get right understanding, the whole path comes up from right view, like that, as one. You can practice individual areas of the path, but they never come up together until right view is in place. Because it is the game changer. It is the fulcrum where everything moves upon. So just seeing how these factors of the path are linked up. They all work together, and right view is the most important of the lot. So, Four Noble Truths you cannot dispense with. It's essential to understand what you're doing and how you're approaching meditation. You know, the three types of desire. You cannot follow desire and expect to experience the purity of perfectly balanced mindfulness. It's letting go into the present. There's one more, just for those people who have an interest in concentration practices. Right concentration. There's this Ananda, he's the Buddha's attendant. He was foremost in 5 things. He was the most incredible attendant for the Buddha, the secretary and all of that. But the most important thing for us was he had a photographic memory, and he remembered all the Buddha's teachings, and he formulated them and passed them on to the next generation. That's why they're here now, because of Ananda. We have a great gift or a great debt of gratitude to Ananda. So he's sitting in the forest under one of the trees. He's not enlightened yet. It took him a long time, 45 years, and he was right next to the Buddha. He did attain the level of stream entry, but he was too busy looking after the Buddha and remembering all the teachings to too much practice, I think. So, but anyway, he had it all stored up in his memory. And then one day this bhikkhuni came up to him, and he was meditating there, and she entered his little grove. He was meditating and paid respects. And then she stood off to one side, and she said, what is the concentration whereby nothing is pushed down or nothing is forced back, nor mental formations held in check or suppressed. So what is the concentration whereby nothing is held down or pushed back, where mental formations are not held in check or suppressed? Still as the result of release, contented as a result of stillness. As a result of contentment, there is no agitation. What does the Blessed One call this the fruit of? And Ananda said, this concentration is the fruit of awakening. So I think this bhikkhuni was teasing Ananda because she was an arahant. And she went to ask him. But anyway, if you see what it says about concentration, it's an openness, it's relaxed, it's at ease, it's not suppressing or holding. Perfect concentration, perfect peace is not a state of intense focus on one point. The one point is the present. That's where you need to be, fully present and relaxed and at ease without suppression, without suppressing or holding anything down or resisting anything. And that comes from right view as well. It all comes from right view. So I've waffled on for long enough this evening, so I think that's enough.